Commander Jack Vance had exactly 3 talents that qualified him for his position as Earth's diplomatic liaison to the Galactic Council. He could drink anyone under the table, he could smile while being insulted in 17 different languages, and he was physically incapable of vomiting at the sight of alien physiology. That last one had proven surprisingly valuable. Commander Vance, your presence is requested in Chamber 12B for the arrival of the Vrexian delegation, chirped his AI assistant through his neural implant. Jack sighed, straightening his uniform. What should I know about these Vrexians? Apex Predators from Vrexian, a Class 5 Deathworld. Considered the second most dangerous sentient species in the known galaxy. And the first? Humans, sir. Obviously. Jack rolled his eyes. Of course. How could I forget our distinguished reputation? Humanity's classification as Deathworlders had been both a blessing and a curse since first contact. On one hand, everyone left them alone. On the other hand, everyone left them alone. Making allies was difficult when most species regarded you as a walking disaster waiting to happen. The council chambers were abuzz with the usual menagerie of alien representatives, floating, slithering, or ambling about in their environmental suits. Jack still couldn't tell if Ambassador Plop from the methane-breathing globs was nodding approvingly or having a seizure when they passed each other. Council Director Zarn, a towering mantis-like being with iridescent exoskeleton, approached Jack with what passed for concern on his mandible-heavy face. Commander Vance, a moment please. The Vrexians are difficult. I've handled difficult before, Director. Not like this. They are predators. Apex predators. From a world that makes your Earth look like a pleasure park. Jack raised an eyebrow. Earth has Australia, Director. And Florida. Zarn's antennae twitched. Yes, well. Please refrain from dying. The paperwork is excessive. I'll do my best to remain uneaten, Jack said with a mock salute. When the Vrexian delegation entered, the chamber fell silent. It wasn't hard to see why. They resembled 8-foot-tall velociraptors with opposable thumbs, covered in iridescent scales and sporting neural enhancement modules embedded in their skulls. The lead Vrexian, adorned with ornate silver jewelry, surveyed the room with eyes that gleamed with predatory intelligence. And trotting beside the ambassador was, something. A creature about the size of a large dog, but with 6 legs, no visible eyes, and far too many teeth arranged in a circular maw that pulsated rhythmically. Ambassador Skith of the Vrexian Imperium, announced the chamber AI. And pet. They brought a pet, whispered Jack to Zarn. Status symbol. That's a Gnarlfang, an apex predator they domesticated. Sort of. Jack nodded professionally, but internally he was making a note to stay far away from the Gnarlfang. Which, naturally, meant the creature immediately turned what he assumed was its front end toward him and made a strange chittering sound. Ambassador Skitha's translator kicked in with a metallic voice. It seems Voracious Delight has noticed something interesting about your human representative. Jack forced a smile. I'm honored. I think. It's the predator recognizing predator, hissed the Vrexian in what might have been admiration. You humans are from a death world too, yes. Perhaps not as glorious as Vrexian, but still respectable. Earth has its challenges, Jack replied diplomatically. The Gnarlfang was now circling Jack, its maw opening and closing like a pulsating flower made of nightmares. The rest of the council members had subtly increased their distance. Voracious Delight is very well trained, assured Skith. He only eats what I permit. Jack maintained his diplomatic smile. That's reassuring. What happened next occurred in approximately 4.3 seconds. The Gnarlfang lunged. Jack attempted evasive maneuvers, which his combat training told him was a backward somersault. Jack remembered too late that he wasn't good at somersaults. Jack found himself on his back. The Gnarlfang's teeth clamped down on his forearm. Everyone screamed. Then the Gnarlfang made a sound no one had ever heard from its species before, something between a hiccup and a wail, and promptly released Jack's arm. Ambassador Skith barked something in Vrexian that the translator didn't catch. The pet staggered backward, its whole body convulsing. "What is happening?" demanded Zarn, already signaling for medical assistance. Jack sat up, staring at his arm in confusion. His uniform sleeve was torn and wet with saliva, but his skin wasn't even broken. The Gnarlfang, meanwhile, was now making retching noises that echoed through the chamber. And then it vomited. Copiously. Across the polished council floor. "Impossible," gasped Skith. "Gnarlfangs can digest metals and weak acids. What is wrong with you, human?" Jack stared at the miserable creature, then at his intact arm, then at the growing horror on alien faces around the room. "I had a burrito for lunch." The chamber erupted into chaos. Medical teams rushed in, some for Jack, others for the Gnarlfang. Security arrived expecting an assassination attempt. The Vrexian delegation was shouting. Director Zarn was trying to maintain order. And somewhere in the pandemonium, the intergalactic news feeds picked up the story: human poisons apex predator with bare skin. 3 hours, 1 minor medical examination, and several diplomatic incidents later, Jack found himself in Director Zarn's private office. "This is unprecedented," Zarn said, pacing the room with jerky insectoid movements. "The Vrexians are demanding an explanation. Half the council is now convinced humans are toxic." "I didn't do anything," Jack protested. "The thing bit me and got sick. Not my fault." "We need answers, Commander. Scientific answers. Before this escalates further." Jack's neural implant pinged with an incoming call. It was Admiral Helena Ortiz, his superior on Earth. "Vance, what the hell did you do?" her holographic image barked the moment he accepted the call. "Got nibbled on, sir. Not intentionally. Well, your little feeding experiment has caused quite the stir. I've got calls from 17 different species asking if humans are poisonous." "And are we?" Jack asked. Ortiz's hologram glared at him. "We don't know, you idiot. That's the problem. Which is why you're being temporarily reassigned." "Reassigned? Where?" "The Galactic Science Academy. They're putting together a research team to figure out why a creature that can digest nuclear waste couldn't handle a bite of Jack Vance." Zarn's mandibles clicked in what might have been approval. "An excellent solution. Scientific investigation is the proper approach." Jack frowned. "I'm not a lab rat." "No," agreed Admiral Ortiz with a dangerous smile. "You're a diplomat who caused an interstellar incident by poisoning an ambassador's pet. Now you get to help solve the mystery, or I'll personally ship you to the Vrexians in a gift basket. The research team will be headed by Dr. Nera Felix," added Zarn. "One of our finest xenobiologists." Jack slumped in defeat. "Fine. But I want it on record that this wasn't my fault." "Noted," said Ortiz. "And Vance? Try not to poison anyone else before you get there." As the call ended, Jack stared at his apparently toxic arm. All he'd wanted was a quiet diplomatic posting where he could enjoy alien cuisine and maybe pick up some interesting souvenirs. Instead, he'd become the galaxy's most puzzling biological hazard. Next time, he muttered to himself as he headed for his quarters to pack, "I'm requesting assignment to the gelatinous blob sector. At least they don't have teeth." Little did Jack know that the mystery of humanity's inedibility would lead to one of the strangest scientific discoveries, and diplomatic advantages, in Earth's brief but chaotic history of galactic relations. The Galactic Science Academy loomed like a giant glass octopus, its transparent tentacle-shaped wings housing research facilities for species from across the known universe. Jack Vance felt distinctly out of place in his military uniform among the flowing robes of the scientific elite. He was a diplomat, sort of, not a test subject. Dr. Nera Thelix met him at the entrance. She was Arcturian, humanoid except for her blue-tinged skin, 6 fingers on each hand, and eyes that reflected light like a cat's. Jack had expected someone in a lab coat wielding menacing instruments. Instead, she greeted him with surprising warmth. "Commander Vance. The human who breaks apex predators. Your reputation precedes you." Jack grimaced. "Not how I wanted to be famous, Doctor. Please, call me Nera. And this is quite fascinating from a scientific perspective. A Class 4 Deathworlder proving inedible to a Vrexian apex predator. Unprecedented. Glad my nearly being eaten is providing academic excitement," Jack muttered. Nera led him through the Academy's winding corridors. "We have a fully equipped xenobiology lab ready. The Vrexians have graciously provided their pet for further study." "Wait. That thing is here. The one that tried to eat me." Voracious delight has made a full recovery. Ambassador Skith insisted on monitoring our research. Scientific curiosity, apparently. "Or looking for weaknesses," Jack said darkly. The laboratory was impressive, a vast chamber filled with equipment Jack couldn't begin to identify. Floating holographic displays showed molecular structures rotating slowly in the air. And inside a containment field in the corner was the Gnarlfang, looking distressingly alert. Ambassador Skith loomed nearby, clawed hands clasped behind his back. He acknowledged Jack with a predatory nod. "Commander. My pet has recovered from your defense mechanism. Not intentional, I assure you." The Vrexian made a sound that might have been a laugh. "If your kind evolved to be toxic to predators, intention is irrelevant. Nature's design is efficient." "We're not toxic," Jack insisted. "At least, I don't think we are." "That's what we're here to discover," interjected Nera, guiding Jack to a medical scanning pod. "We'll need samples. Blood, tissue, sweat, saliva. Nothing invasive," she added at Jack's expression. The next 3 days were a blur of tests, scans, and increasingly bizarre experiments. Jack provided more bodily fluids than he thought possible, watched as the scientists exposed various alien organisms to his samples, and endured endless questions about human diet and biology. On the 4th day, Nera burst into his temporary quarters with the manic energy of a scientist on the verge of discovery. "We've got it, Jack. We've figured it out." Jack looked up from the alien novel he'd been struggling to understand. "I'm not poisonous after all." "No, you are. But not in the way we thought." She projected a hologram from her wrist device. "It's not your natural biology that's toxic. It's what you put into it." The hologram showed microscopic structures that meant nothing to Jack. "Meaning? Humans consume substances that would kill most sentient species. Caffeine. Capsaicin. Theobromine. Alcohol. Not to mention the preservatives, flavor enhancers, and artificial compounds in your processed foods." Jack blinked. "You're saying the Gnarlfang got sick because I had lunch?" "Precisely. The burrito you mentioned. It contained compounds that wreaked havoc on its digestive system. Your blood is filled with trace amounts of substances that are mildly toxic to you but catastrophic to other biologies." Ambassador Skith entered the room, his scaled form nearly brushing the ceiling. "Is this true, Doctor?" Nera nodded enthusiastically. "Humans are walking chemical factories. They voluntarily consume poisons that they've adapted to tolerate. Their entire food culture revolves around substances that would be considered biological weapons on most worlds." Jack wasn't sure whether to be proud or horrified. "So I'm toxic because I like coffee and hot sauce." "And alcohol," added Nera. "The ethanol content in your blood alone would qualify as a controlled substance on 12 planets." Skitha's expression was unreadable to Jack, but his next words were clear enough. "This explains much about human behavior. You seek the thrill of poison, just as we seek the thrill of the hunt. I wouldn't go that far, Jack protested. We just like flavor. Your flavor is our toxin, the Vrexian replied. Fascinating. My people will need to know this. As Skith departed, Jack turned to Nera. Is this going to cause another diplomatic incident? On the contrary, she said with a smile. I think you've just given humanity a significant advantage in galactic politics. Jack soon discovered she was right. Word spread quickly through the Galactic Council. Humans weren't merely Deathworlders, they were toxic Deathworlders who deliberately consumed poisons for pleasure. Species that had previously regarded humans with cautious respect now added a healthy dose of bewilderment to their diplomatic interactions. Admiral Ortiz contacted him a week later, her holographic form actually showing approval for once. Nice work, Vance. Intentional or not. Thanks, I think. What's the fallout? The Council has classified humans as a biohazard species, but in a good way. 3 trade agreements that were stalled have suddenly been approved. The Vrexians are proposing a military alliance. And there's talk of giving Earth a permanent seat on the Security Council. Jack raised an eyebrow. Because we like spicy food? Because everyone's afraid we might sneeze on them, Ortiz said with a rare smile. Fear is a powerful diplomatic tool, Commander. So what now? Back to my regular diplomatic duties? Not quite. The Council wants you to head up a new department. Interspecies dietary relations. Apparently, you're uniquely qualified. Jack groaned. You're kidding. I never kid about diplomacy, Vance. Your first task is hosting a formal dinner for Council representatives. Dr. Thelix will help ensure you don't accidentally poison anyone important. 6 weeks later, Jack found himself overseeing the galaxy's most complex dinner party. The Grand Hall of the Council had been transformed into a dining area with 27 distinct environmental sections, specialized food preparation facilities, and more warning labels than a nuclear reactor. Nera, now his official scientific advisor, checked the final preparations. Each species has a customized menu safe for their biology. And we've ensured the human section is properly quarantined. Quarantined makes it sound so appealing, Jack muttered, adjusting his formal uniform. Better safe than causing an interstellar incident. Again. The dinner was a surprising success. Aliens from across the galaxy dined in proximity to humans for the first time without fear of contamination. Jack found himself seated between Director Zarn and Ambassador Skith, an arrangement that would have been unthinkable before the toxic human discovery. I must say, Commander, Zarn commented, delicately consuming something that resembled blue algae, your species continues to surprise. Who would have thought that your poisonous nature would improve diplomatic relations? We're full of surprises, Jack agreed, taking a sip of wine. He noticed Skith watching the glass with fascination. Is that one of your toxins? The Vrexian asked. This? It's wine. Fermented grape juice with ethanol. Fairly mild by human standards. Skitha's translator conveyed something like amusement. On Vrex 9, we have a similar concept. We allow prey to ferment before consuming it. The toxins produced create a sensation that warriors prize. Jack nearly choked on his drink. You're saying we're basically rotten meat that walks around? In the most respectful sense, the ambassador clarified. By the end of the evening, Jack had fielded dozens of questions about human cuisine, most along the lines of, why would you eat that, and does it hurt? He was exhausted but satisfied. Earth's position in the galactic community had never been stronger, all because humans enjoyed substances that made other species violently ill. As the last of the guests departed, Nera joined him at the human table, curious but cautious about the remaining food items. A success, I'd say, she commented. Though I'm still trying to understand why you'd evolve to enjoy pain-inducing chemicals like this. She pointed to a bottle of hot sauce. It's not pain, exactly, Jack tried to explain. It's intensity. Excitement. Your species deliberately seeks discomfort for pleasure, she marveled. No wonder you survived a death world. Jack grinned and held up his wine glass in a toast. To humanity, the only species in the galaxy that deliberately poisons itself for fun. Nera carefully clinked her glass of water against his. And somehow thrives because of it. As Jack sipped his wine, he reflected on the strange turn of events. Humans had spent years trying to prove they belonged in the galactic community despite their Deathworld origins. Now they were respected precisely because they were walking biohazards with bizarre taste buds. It wasn't the diplomatic victory he'd imagined, but Jack would take it. In a galaxy full of predators and prey, humans had carved out a unique niche, too toxic to eat, too stubborn to die, and just strange enough to keep everyone guessing. The next day, Jack received a special delivery from Ambassador Skith, a ceremonial Vrexian blade with a note that translated to, "For the warrior who defeats predators with his very essence." Jack placed it proudly on his office wall, right next to a framed menu from the Mexican restaurant where he'd eaten that fateful burrito. Sometimes diplomacy came down to teeth and claws. Other times, it came down to hot sauce and caffeine. Jack decided he preferred the latter.